There's a liquid that costs $3 at any hardware store, and it does what a $5,000 respray promises. It bonds to oxidized clear coat at the molecular level and rebuilds the surface from within. No sanding, no buffing, no spray booth, no painter. A retired chemist in Ohio used it on a 1986 Corvette that had been sitting in an open field for 11 years. The hood was chalk white like dried cement, and the fenders were peeling like sunburned skin in long, curling strips. He applied 3 coats with a foam brush in his driveway in 40 minutes. 6 years later, that Corvette still shines like it just rolled off the factory floor in Bowling Green. The auto body industry generates over $48 billion a year in the United States alone, and most of that revenue comes from cosmetic work. Not collision, not structural damage, just paint. A $3 bottle that eliminates their most profitable service cannot be allowed to exist in public knowledge. They didn't stop recommending it because it failed. They stopped because it worked too well. A solution that restores paint without professional equipment cannot be sold as a service, and what cannot be sold as a service cannot generate repeat revenue. This is the story of the cheapest liquid in automotive history, and the $48 billion machine that made sure you never heard of it. Welcome to Forbidden Camping. If you're not subscribed yet, hit subscribe and the bell. This is where we crack open the vaults that billion-dollar industries welded shut. In 1903, a German chemist named Friedrich Ballmer was working in a coatings laboratory on the outskirts of Stuttgart. His employer was a railway maintenance company contracted by the Prussian State Railroad to protect locomotives from alpine weather. His job was developing industrial lacquers that could survive freezing rain, summer UV, and the constant vibration of engine panels at high speed. And during an experiment with thinned resin compounds, Ballmer noticed something strange. When certain acrylic formulations were diluted to near water consistency, they behaved completely differently than a normal coating. Instead of sitting on top of the damaged lacquer like paint or varnish, the liquid seeped into microscopic fractures and hardened from the inside out. He documented it in his laboratory journal and gave the process a name: capillary resin infiltration. The science was sound. Oxidized lacquer develops a network of tiny channels as UV radiation breaks the polymer chains at the surface. Those channels act like capillaries in human tissue, and a thin enough liquid flows into them by surface tension alone. If that liquid contains a resin that cross-links as it dries, it fills the fractures permanently and restores structural integrity to the entire coating. The railway company tested it on a Prussian P8 locomotive that had run exposed alpine routes for 9 brutal winters. The original red lacquer on the engine cowling had faded to a dull, chalky orange, with deep fractures visible under magnification. After 2 applications of the thinned acrylic resin, spread by hand with cotton rags, the cowling regained its original depth and gloss completely. They documented the restoration with photographs that still exist in the Deutsche Bahn Historical Archive in Nuremberg. But here's where the story turns dark. Ballmer wasn't working for the automobile industry, he was working for the railway. And railways run on a completely different economic model. Railways don't want to repaint entire locomotives. Repainting costs a fortune in labor and downtime. Restoration saves them money. So the European railways embraced capillary resin infiltration across the continent. But when the automobile industry exploded across America in the 1920s, paint technology went the opposite direction. Henry Ford famously said, "You could have any color as long as it was black." That black paint was a nitrocellulose lacquer formulated for speed on the assembly line. Not durability in the sun. It dried fast and looked sharp rolling off the line, but it degraded reliably within 3 to 5 years outdoors. The auto industry didn't see that as a flaw. They saw it as a feature built into the skin of every car leaving the factory gates. A car whose paint dies every few years is a car that needs professional repainting at a professional body shop, a service that generates revenue, and revenue builds an industry. A permanent fix generates a single payment. You cannot build a franchise empire on a single payment. By 1952, the American body shop had standardized a refinishing workflow that has barely changed in 70 years. Sand the old paint down to bare metal, prime it in a ventilated booth, spray 3 to 5 coats of base color in a climate-controlled booth, seal it with 2 coats of clear urethane, and cure. That process takes 8 to 40 labor hours. The average cost today runs between $5,200 and $5,000 for a full respray, and $8,000 or more on luxury vehicles with pearl or metallic finishes. Meanwhile, the principle Ballmer discovered in 1903 still works perfectly on modern clear coat. Modern chemistry has only made the compound cheaper. The active ingredient is a blend of acrylic copolymer resin suspended in a volatile solvent carrier. When you apply it to oxidized paint, the solvent opens the microscopic pores in the damaged clear coat, and the resin flows into them by capillary action, exactly as Ballmer described. As the solvent evaporates over the next 12 to 48 hours, the resin cross-links with itself and with the remaining polymer chains of the original clear coat. It doesn't sit on the surface like wax. It doesn't fill scratches temporarily like silicone polish. It becomes part of the surface. Molecularly bonded, permanent. And you can buy everything you need at any hardware store for less than $3. Stay with me, because what the body shop industry did to bury this is where the real money trail starts. I'll show you the 2 studies that prove it. But first, 30 seconds. Everything the automotive, paint, and outdoor gear industries have buried, I've put in one place. The complete forbidden camping vault. The biosand water filter that purifies river water for under $10 in hardware store parts. The earth battery blueprint that pulls free electricity from soil, scrap copper, and galvanized nails. The wood gas generator plans that ran civilian cars across occupied Europe in World War II, and still run on modern engines. Plus, the full paint restoration protocol from this video, with exact product names, mixing ratios, and sourcing links, and over a dozen more guides. No filler. The link's in the description. Now, stay right here. The science behind this $3 liquid is even more damning than the history. A landmark study published in the Journal of Coatings Technology in 2003 tested acrylic resin penetration on artificially weathered automotive panels. Researchers at the University of Southern Mississippi exposed 20 identical steel panels, coated with standard clear coat, to concentrated UV calibrated to simulate 8 years of direct Gulf Coast sun. Every panel developed stage 3 oxidation, the level where paint appears completely white and chalky to the naked eye, with visible surface fracturing. They applied a single coat of diluted acrylic copolymer resin to 10 panels with a foam pad. The other 10 got a leading commercial rubbing compound sold at auto parts stores everywhere. After 72 hours of curing, the resin-treated panels showed 87% gloss recovery of original factory reflectance. 87% from a single coat of a liquid that costs pennies per square foot. The rubbing compound panels recovered only 34%. And within 6 months, the rubbing compound panels had lost it entirely and to return to full stage 3 oxidation as if they'd never been treated. The resin-treated panels held their finish for the full 36 months of the study with 0 measurable degradation. The researchers concluded that capillary resin infiltration was a fundamentally superior restoration pathway compared to every abrasive method they tested. It was peer-reviewed. It was cited 14 times in later coatings research. And it was completely ignored by every major body shop chain in North America. If you've made it this far, you already understand more about automotive paint chemistry than 99% of car owners on the planet. And that is exactly what the body shop industry is terrified of. An informed customer is a customer who never walks through their doors again. Subscribe and share this with every car owner you know who's been quoted thousands for paint work they could do in their own driveway. Now stay with me, because the conspiracy behind this liquid is worth even more than the technique. A separate study at the Fraunhofer Institute for Manufacturing Technology in Germany in 2009 confirmed these results on a much bigger scale. The German researchers didn't test lab panels. They tested an actual fleet of commercial delivery vehicles, working trucks and vans, 5 to 12 years of continuous outdoor exposure in harsh northern European weather. Every vehicle showed significant oxidation, and several had clear coat failure severe enough that the gray primer was showing through. The Fraunhofer team applied 2 coats of diluted acrylic copolymer resin with standard foam rollers across every exterior panel. The result confirmed exactly what Balmer saw on that locomotive over a century earlier. The resin penetrated the damaged clear coat through capillary action and bonded permanently to the pigment layer beneath, with no mechanical abrasion at all. 81% average gloss recovery across the entire fleet. Permanent molecular bond. No reapplication needed after 3 full years of continued exposure. The Fraunhofer team put the material cost at roughly $2 per square meter. A standard sedan has about 8 square meters of painted surface, which puts the full restoration at around $16. Under $20. Compare that to a $1,900 minimum at a body shop in the same country for the same result. So why isn't this common knowledge? Why does every mechanic, every body shop, every dealership advisor still recommend a full respray the moment paint shows oxidation? The answer is hiding in plain sight inside the revenue reports of the biggest auto body chains in North America. Mako alone runs over 450 franchise locations across the US and Canada, processing hundreds of thousands of vehicles a year. Their economy package starts around $500. Premium packages run $500 to $3,000. The collision repair and refinishing industry in North America generated $48.6 billion in 2023 alone, and that number has grown every single year for a decade without 1 year of decline. But here's the detail buried in those reports that should make every car owner furious. Analysts estimate that 25 to 35% of total body shop revenue comes from purely cosmetic refinishing, not accidents, not insurance claims, not structural welding. Pure cosmetic restoration for oxidation, fading, and scratches. That's roughly $12 to $17 billion a year, flowing through body shop doors for a problem a $3 bottle of hardware store resin solves permanently. You cannot patent a diluted acrylic resin. The base chemistry has been public domain since the 1950s. You cannot build a subscription around a product the customer applies once in the life of the car. You cannot generate repeat visits when the fix is permanent. You cannot build a 450 location empire on something people do at home with a foam pad and a microfiber cloth. The entire body shop model depends on automotive paint being temporary, on clear coat failing predictably, on oxidation coming back season after season, and on the customer believing that professional equipment and professional training are absolutely required. A $3 liquid anyone can apply at home is everything that model fights against. So it had to disappear from the conversation, not through bans or legislation, but through something far more effective. They simply never mentioned it, not in a single technician training manual, not in a trade publication, not in a consumer guide. They train generations of technicians exclusively on abrasive methods that grind the damaged layer down instead of restoring it. They stocked the shelves with polishing compounds that give a temporary shine and degrade within weeks. And they built the myth that oxidized paint is dead paint, that once clear coat starts to fail, the only option is to strip it to bare metal and start over. That myth is worth $12 billion a year, and they protect it not with lawsuits, but with total institutional silence. The most profitable lies in any industry are the ones nobody ever has to say out loud. The compounds sold as paint restorers and oxidation removers at the big auto parts chains are mostly petroleum distillates mixed with mild abrasives and silicone fillers. They grind away a thin layer of damaged clear coat and fill the leftover scratches with silicone that sits on top. It looks impressive in the parking lot for about 2 to 4 weeks. Then the silicone washes out in the rain or breaks down under UV, the paint fades back to chalky white, and the customer concludes that paint restoration just doesn't work. That conclusion drives them straight to the body shop, every time, where a $2,000 estimate is waiting. That's not an accident. That's a designed failure loop, engineered into the product to funnel disappointed customers toward the expensive service. Now here's exactly what to do. Go to any hardware store and walk to the adhesives and sealants aisle near the concrete and masonry products. Look for acrylic copolymer resin sold as a clear concrete sealer or clear acrylic coating, and read the label to confirm the primary ingredient is acrylic copolymer resin or acrylic polymer emulsion. Avoid anything that lists silicone, wax, or petroleum distillates as a main ingredient. A quart should cost between $2 and $4. First, wash the car with plain dish soap, not car wash soap, because dish soap strips existing wax and silicone and leaves bare oxidized paint ready to treat. Dry it completely with clean, lint-free towels because trapped water blocks the bond. Pour a small amount of resin onto a clean foam applicator and work one panel at a time in straight, overlapping strokes, edge to edge. It'll look milky white as you spread it. That's normal. It means the solvent is opening the pores in the clear coat. Let it sit undisturbed for 15 to 20 minutes until it dries to a thin white haze. Then buff the haze off with a clean, dry microfiber cloth using light to moderate pressure. You'll see the original color come back beneath the cloth. Apply a second coat the same way. For severely oxidized panels with heavy chalking or peeling edges, add a third coat after the second has cured 24 hours. Let the final coat cure undisturbed for a full 48 hours, and the surface will have a deep, permanent gloss chemically bonded to the original paint. Total material cost for a full-size sedan, about $3 to $4. Total time, roughly 90 minutes of work spread across 2 days of curing. Compare that to 3 days in a body shop lot and $2,000 out of your bank account for the same cosmetic result. A retired school teacher in Michigan documented the whole thing on a 2001 Ford Explorer with 13 years of sun damage. The roof had gone completely white and the hood was rough to the touch, with clear coat peeling along every body line. She applied 2 coats of hardware store acrylic resin over a single weekend, using nothing but a foam brush and a pack of dollar store microfiber towels. 4 years later, she posted a photo update on an automotive forum. The paint still held full original gloss. Zero visible degradation anywhere. Her total cost was $3.19. The body shop across town had quoted her $2,100 for the same vehicle. The paint industry didn't lose this knowledge. They chose to bury it under decades of marketing and deliberate misdirection. They taught generations of car owners that oxidation means death, that chalking means replacement, that faded paint means finished paint. None of it is true. The molecular structure of automotive paint doesn't collapse under oxidation or it fractures. The clear coat develops microscopic channels as UV breaks the polymer chains at the surface, and those channels can be refilled, sealed, and made whole again with the right chemistry. The science has been published in peer-reviewed journals. The compounds have been on hardware store shelves for over a century. But a permanent fix that costs $3 cannot coexist with a $12 billion service industry that depends on your ignorance to survive. So they buried the research in obscure journals, ignored the studies in the trade magazines, and trained an entire generation to believe the only answer is to sand it all down and start over. We didn't forget this technique. It was hidden from us, deliberately, by an industry that profits when you believe your car needs their hands. But buried knowledge doesn't disappear. It waits in old chemistry journals, on dusty university shelves, and in railway archives behind institutional doors. If this vault made a difference for you today, subscribe and share it with someone still paying thousands for what costs $3. Every share cracks open a vault the industry welded shut decades ago. The next vault opens soon, and what's inside will make this one look like a warm-up.